This episode is sponsored by Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. June's featured entertainment includes Ace Frehley on the 15th and Elle King on the 21st. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Actor Judge Reinhold has unfortunately canceled this Saturday's visit to DC's Warner Theater, where he was going to screen his classic 1982 film Fast Times at Ridgemont High. However, here's the unedited conversation we had before the cancellation, sharing his memories of Fast Times as well as other roles in Stripes, Beverly Hills Cop, and The Santa Claus, not to mention his Emmy nomination as the close talker in Seinfeld.
Hey, Jason, it's Judge.
Hey, Judge Reinhold. Hey, thanks so much for joining us in Washington, D.C.
Thank you for having me.
Now, this is a really cool treat because you're coming to the Warner Theater, historic spot, to screen the iconic movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High on Saturday, June 8th. Now, before we get to the screening, this is like a little bit of a homecoming for you, right? Like, I know you were born in Wilmington, Delaware, over the border there, but didn't you spend some time in Fredericksburg, Virginia, went to Mary Washington College, all that stuff?
Well, I was pretty much raised in the Burg, yeah. And I went to Mary Washington College. Really, I was just hanging out at the drama department, and they didn't have, at that time, it was just a girls' college, and they didn't have any guys. So that was the extent of my involvement with Mary Washington.
Oh, so you didn't actually go there?
Well, no, I was just in place there. They needed guys, and I had a freshman girlfriend, and I was still in high school. It was a pretty cool time.
And that's how your acting career was born.
Well, yeah, I'm not the first. You know, I originally in 10th grade in high school, I followed a cute girl into drama class. The teacher told me if I wanted to stay in the class, I had to read for a play, and I got the lead in it, and that was that. Then I was off.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah,
Fast Times at Mary Washington. That's great.
Right.
Well, let's talk Fast Times because that's what this screening is. We can get to your other roles later, I guess. But yeah, like, so how exactly does it work? Did they just show it on a big screen, or you do like a Q&A afterward, or how does it work?
Well, Live Nation has been booking me in these beautiful old theaters. I'm just delighted to bring the film, but it's not just the movie, because I know most people at these screenings have seen it. There's a handful that haven't, which is fun.
Right.
But I really like to bring all the production stories and the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I'd like to introduce the film with some stories that'll add a dimension to the movie when you're watching it again. See, so you're aware of kind of a whole other story behind it. So, and I made sure there's always a bar too. So I want to create. No, I want to create a fun Saturday night out. That's really what I want to do. Bill Macy, my friend Bill Macy, has been traveling with Fargo too. So
we interviewed him on this exact station, and we just had him on for the exact same thing when he screened Fargo. So we got to talk about Jerry Lundegaard.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Did he tell you how he fought for that role? It's just such an amazing story.
That movie is one of my all-time favorites, seriously. And Fast Times is too. I don't want to short.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Fargo's one of mine too, and Bill is one of the nicest guys in the business, really.
You know what's funny too is not only that one that was at Warner Theater, and then also Alan Ruck screened Ferris Bueller at Warner Theater, and now Judge Reinhold doing Fast Times at Warner. So I just come to Warner Theater and see these acting greats screen these classics.
I had no idea. I knew Bill was touring with Fargo, so wow, it's a tour, yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. Okay. Look up those combos with Alan Ruck and William Macy in the archives of this podcast. But right now, it's all about Judge Reinhold. That's cool.
No, that's fine. I think it's appropriate that we play DC because we just recently were the movie was put in the Library of Congress.
Yeah, the National Film Registry. It just got it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I mean, I scratched my head like probably a lot of people did, but they said it was because it was an authentic representation of American high school life at that time. And I think that's true. One of the things I like to point out is that a lot of the dialogue was transcribed from real students when Cameron Crowe masqueraded as a senior in high school, in a Long Beach high school, and he did that. He carried on that way for a year because he wanted to see how these stories played out.
Now, when you say masqueraded, how old was he?
Oh yeah, it was the Cameron. Almost famous. The film Almost Famous is really autobiographical. He looked very, very young for his age. When he was in his 20s, he still looked like he was 17.
Yeah,
17 or 18. So he pretended to be a senior, and nobody knew. I think maybe the principal knew. Even the teachers didn't know. But he was writing an expose for Rolling Stone magazine. Yeah. Then he turned it into a book called Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Universal picked up the rights to it, and then we did the movie.
That's crazy. And yeah. I mean, a lot of people forget that, because when you say Cameron Crowe, a lot of people think of his writer/director things like Say Anything and Jerry Maguire and Almost Famous, but none of that would have been possible without him doing the book and the script for Fast Times. So that kind of launched in a way,
I think this is one of his best scripts, actually. I'm not saying it's his only one. It's one of his best ones. And it's probably the only one that has so much dialogue that came from people. He didn't wear a wire, but he would hear these. No, there's a lot of dialogue where he would run into the boys' room and write it down before he forgot it. Damone's speech to Ratner about how to get a girl. That was like verbatim. He told me.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you know that, it's, that's what I like to bring to the screening is background stories that'll really give it more, just more fun.
That's great. Yeah. Wait, which speech are you talking about? The one where it's like, and whatever you do, you have to play Led Zeppelin 4, smash cut.
That's the one.
Kashmir, and they look.
Yeah, that's the one. No, that's the one. That's some kid told Cameron that.
Oh, great advice. Not.
Yeah, right.
But, we're giving Cameron Crowe his flowers for that dialogue, but let's build up Amy Heckerling. It was the director and, a groundbreaking, female filmmaker. If you think about it, this is 1982, and she would go on to do Look Who's Talking and Clueless, and, Clueless, another, amazing high school movie. But yeah, talk about what it was like working with Amy Heckerling as a director.
Oh, I got spoiled so quickly, so early in the game. Amy was fantastic. I was too young to realize what an anomaly it was to be working with a woman. Yeah. She was a friend of mine. So we had a great shorthand, but it was really, people wonder how does a good movie, a really good movie happen? It's really usually a marriage of sensibilities between the writer and the director. And in this case, the producer too, Art Linson, who went on to do The Untouchables and Fight Club and just become legendary. Yeah. The three of these people really came together, and we were all very, very lucky that it happened. And that's how really good movies happen.
I entirely. Yeah. And Amy Heckerling, it's such a good point that, yes, the script was based on Cameron Crowe's experiences, a guy writing it, but with the lead character played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, I think you almost needed a woman's eye to pull off a lot of those scenes, directing, coaching the actors from that perspective, from a lot of it. So I don't know. I just want to give Amy and Penny Marshall, the two of them, with Big and League of Their Own, and Amy with this and Clueless. Like, I don't think they get enough credit for.
That's a great comparison, and I know them both. And they both had this similar sensibility where they thought that human sexuality was funny. Amy wasn't trying to be some kind of sexual renegade. She just found a tremendous amount of humor in human sexuality. And that was in that respect, she was a renegade at that time. And it was just perfect sensibility for that script. And she did take the sexuality probably farther than maybe Cameron had intended. She wanted to introduce male frontal nudity because she didn't think it was fair that at that time women were the only ones that could be naked, and so they did shoot it. But Robert Romanus, that in the pool scene, was absolutely he was just mortified, and the studio cut it, of course.
Bit of a double standard, right, in the early 80s.
Oh, it's a real double standard, and Amy wanted to change it, and poor Robert was supposed to be the Neil Armstrong of. But the reason why we got away with any of that at all was because Universal was busy. They had poured all this money in the best little whorehouse in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And they were doing that film while we were doing ours, and we were just off the radar. We were just this little $2-3 million movie that they forgot about. So,
well, think about I mean, when you're up against Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds, that's where you would think all the money would go to that and all the attention, and it did. And then all of a sudden, little did you know that your little movie had a bunch of quote unknown people that would become just as big of names as those. So you're playing Brad Hamilton, and we mentioned Jennifer Jason Leigh as your sister Stacy in the movie, but also you got Sean Penn as Spicoli would go on to win Oscars, 2 Oscars, I think. Forrest Whitaker would go on to win an Oscar. He's the linebacker. You can get an appearance by Nicolas Cage and like the fast food mall stuff. It's crazy how many Oscar winners
it is
in this cast.
We have 3 Oscar winners in that cast. Crazy.
And several others that should have won one, like you.
Oh, well, I don't know. I'm happy with my Emmy nomination. That's fine. But
Seinfeld, right? You were the close talk.
Oh yeah. That was a very delightful surprise. But Sean, nobody knew who Sean was. It wasn't. We weren't told. We weren't commanded. We were to call him Spicoli. Amy just said, "Hey, he wants to be called Spicoli." And we said, "Well, who is he?" And his name is Sean. And I thought, okay, this guy is he's either a comic I thought he was a comic that only had one shtick of playing a stoner, right? That's who I figured he was.
You thought he was Cheech and Chong. All I need is some tasty wave and a cool buzz.
I had no idea until the last few days when we shot the Mighty Mart scene. Yeah. He started to drop that, and he became this incredibly sophisticated, insightful guy. And I thought, oh my gosh, this guy is brilliant.
Yeah, no one would have thought watching that Stoner Spicoli he would go on to do Mystic River and Milk and all that stuff. Like, it's crazy the range of it.
I think I Am Sam. I would have given him an Oscar for I Am Sam. I thought that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Man, what a run of roles for sure. I mean, Forrest Whitaker, all of them really. It's incredible. But you know what? And Jennifer Jason Leigh, she's done really well. I mean, it's great to be able to drop in like a time capsule and see all these collection of people that were just about to explode and become stars. It's wild.
I think one reason why we're multi-generational, because kids do come and see these screenings, is I realized that fashion-wise, we didn't really date ourselves too much, except for the Pat Benatar girls in the cafeteria. But it really hasn't. I mean, they just look like kind of regular high school kids.
And it's universal themes. I mean, maybe you could drop, smartphones in the hands of them now or so.
Oh,
but
sure.
Other than that, I mean, you're hanging out at the mall. There's some cool things that don't really happen anymore. Malls don't exist. But, it's a time capsule. But the themes are still universal, the relationship. So it holds up, baby.
Well, kids, they need money. They have after school jobs because they need money, and they're interested in sex. That's That's pretty universal.
Absolutely. And then what we have to mention the soundtrack too, because it kicks off with the Go-Go's. You know, we got the beat Jackson Brown's "Somebody's Baby" during the, you know, the baseball dugout lovemaking. Like, it's a lot of those songs. I think really help set the time and the place. Don't you think?
What happened was Universal started to get cold feet because of the nudity and because it was an R. They pulled back our release, which they regretted. I mean, they pulled back some of the theaters. And Art Linson, being the brilliant producer that he was and is, ran to Irving Azoff, who was running Universal MCA and was also manager of the Eagles. And he said to Irving, "You want to be a movie producer?" He said, "I don't know anything about movies." And Art said, "You don't have to. I need this artist, that artist." and that's how we got our soundtrack. Then he ran back across the street and said, "I've got this soundtrack to offset any deficit that you guys think this movie's going to have." And it's just brilliant producing. And I remember being so green and asking Art, "What does a producer do?" And he said, "Whatever it takes."
Nice.
So that's how that soundtrack came to be.
Thanks for that story, because I mean, I didn't.
Oh, I got a lot of them.
Oh, I'm sure you do. You're a fountain of knowledge on this. But yeah, I mean, we got the beat. I guess the Go-Go's had done that. Was it? It was. I know Somebody's Baby was Jackson Brown recorded it for the movie, like you're saying. But the Go-Go's? I think that song already out.
No, that was the only. No, Jackson Brown's song was the only original song.
Okay, gotcha.
Brad's theme was "Waffle Stomp" by Joe Walsh, and that was fun. We tried so hard to get Springsteen. Amy hired Bruce Springsteen's sister, Pam, who was a good actress. I mean, she probably would have got it anyway.
Yeah.
I wore a Bruce Springsteen T-shirt in Mighty Mar. We did, but the boss wouldn't give it up. He wouldn't give up.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I think partially because of the soundtrack. I think of, you know, Fast Times to me, I always lump it in my brain with, like, you know, American Graffiti had that great wall-to-wall soundtrack, but that was like a nostalgic look at the 60s, and then George Lucas. And then Richard Linklater, after you guys, does Dazed and Confused, which is sort of a nostalgic look at the 70s with a great soundtrack. But you guys sort of were, to me, the definitive, if that was 60s and 70s, you guys were the definitive 80s, but unlike those movies, you weren't nostalgically looking back. You were kind of capturing it in real time with real 80s songs. So, I don't know. To me, I always think of those as a trio.
We didn't know the 80s was the 80s, you know?
Exactly.
The 80s were, they knew the 60s was the 60s, and Linklater knew the 70s was the 70s. We had the 80s, we had the 80s ahead. So,
yeah, right. It wasn't where are you in 62? It was, where are you in 82? Well,
that's right.
Right now, that's all, it's here.
That's all we knew. That's
right. So, but to me, man, if there are younger, I don't know, not even really millennials at this point, but like Gen Z or whatever's after millennials, if you're like, you want to know what those decades of American history coming of age was like, you know, watch American Graffiti for the 60s, watch Jason, and watch Fast Times for the 80s. I don't know, what would 90s be? I guess Clueless or American Pie or something, but.
No, not American Pie. No. I don't think there's a lot of teenagers running around having sex with bakery goods.
No. Maybe Clueless. Well, then we got all the John Hughes.
Well, no, Clueless, she wanted to go. Clueless is about an affluent culture. Yeah. That's a good question, you know? I'm sure there's a good answer. I don't know.
We'll think on it.
Sure.
But anyway, well, I wanted to thank you. So we went really in depth on Fast Times. Before we run, I wanted to remind listeners some of your other big roles, because I guess you had done Stripes before this. Memories of Stripes, really quick. I don't want to blow past that one. That's a major comedy, but working with Bill Murray and Ivan Reitman, I mean, legends of.
Well, that was really, I think of that more as a school than. I didn't have much of a role, but what an incredible school that was to be around John Candy and Bill and
Harold Ramis too.
Oh, Harold, yeah, Harold and Bill. That was Cheech and Chong goes to the army.
Yeah,
and they couldn't make a deal. That apparently the manager messed that up. And Warner Brothers still wanted to do the movie. Ivan Reitman came in, got Bill because they just done Meatballs, and Harold and Bill wrote their way through that. And they'd go into Bill's trailer after we'd finished blocking the scene to decide that's when you decide where the actors are how they're gonna move and where the camera moves and stuff. When they have it all lit and everything, they would come out, and the stuff that would come out of Bill's mouth was, I'd have to put next time you see the movie, Candy would put his head down, okay, to hide, because you didn't want to blow the take. I would put my hands in my pockets and squeeze my thighs so hard that sometimes I would have a bruise at the end of the day, because it was just great. Bill was in just top form. He was just on fire in that movie, you know?
He had just done Caddyshack, so he was like right off of that.
Caddyshack, it was between me and Michael. Yeah.
Wait, when you're saying it was between you and Michael, what do you mean? You auditioned for Caddyshack, you mean?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, Harold had me in.
You mean Michael O'Keefe, Danny Noonan, you auditioned?
Yeah, Michael O'Keefe. Yeah, and I'm not saying that Michael's a fine actor. I admire him a lot. That the great Santini came out with Robert Duvall at the same time they were casting, so I think that kind of helped the case with him. And I was upset with Harold, but not really. I found my way. But that would have been cool. But I knew Harold from Stripes. I knew Harold from Stripes. So
I didn't realize you auditioned for that. That's cool. So you did Stripes and Fast Times, and then you were like really a household name at that point. So I want to ask you about Beverly Hills Cop, just working with Eddie Murphy. I mean, I guess he was just starting with SNL and stuff, but he was about to blow up into a mega movie star. But yeah, just memories of working with him so young at that point.
Eddie was 19 and pulled Saturday Night Live out of a ratings quagmire just by himself, with James Brown's Hot Tub and Gumby and Mr. Robinson. Neighborhood, right. So he was already a big star from Saturday Night Live when we did Beverly Hills Cop. But Beverly Hills Cop was originally an action vehicle for Sylvester Stallone. I was cast before Eddie was. Stallone was going to play Axel. And Stallone decided to take Cobra instead, which I don't know, probably regrets. I don't know. Right. But suddenly I was in an Eddie Murphy movie, and that was very exciting. But it wasn't a comedy, so we had to write ourselves through it. And Marty Brest, who is so brilliant, he got Sam Simon, who went on to create The Simpsons. We got fresh pages every morning, and then we improv'd our way through the movie too, which was no problem for Eddie, but it was a little daunting for me.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It was just as much an action movie, and with some comedy woven in. Like you disturbing the peace, like I'm throwing out of a window. But it was probably mostly an action movie, a cop movie. All right. Well, you've been in so many roles, but there's one more I have to ask because it was a childhood favorite of mine. I was about 10 when this came out, so that gives you an idea. The Santa Claus. I have to ask you about this.
Oh,
people forget nowadays how big Tim Allen was at that time, because Home Improvement was massive. Everybody watched that every night. And then Toy Story was about to come out the next year as Buzz Lightyear. So, like, this was prime Tim Allen. But what was it like getting, so he's obviously the comedian in this movie, but you get to be the straight man, Dr. Neil, who doesn't believe in Santa. Well, until you get that weenie whistle at the end. But yeah, just memories of trying to play the straight man and the serious guy, the foil to this legendary comedian at that time.
Tim had made so much money for ABC and Disney that he brought the Santa Claus to them, and they weren't that crazy about it. They thought it was too far-fetched. It's hard to imagine, but they gave him the Santa Claus as a gift for making so much money for them, and they didn't give us a lot of money. Some of the sets, the walls were shaking when you closed the door. They didn't really. That movie was made for a budget price, and then it went on to we won the People's Choice Awards. It was very exciting, and Tim was another person who I had to put my hands in the pockets for, because he was just on fire, just like Bill was, boy. Now that you mention it, gosh, between Eddie and Tim and Bill, I've had a lot of bruises on my thigh.
Just squeezing, trying not to laugh. You mean?
Oh man, yeah.
Not to mention, when you're doing the Close Talker, wrap it back around. You mentioned your Emmy nomination for Guest Actor on Seinfeld, the Raincoats episode, where you were making out during Schindler's List, and you spoofed the thing at the end. I could have done one more person, that whole thing. But when you're doing the Close Talker, man, and you're right up in their faces, how did you not laugh? Like, were you bruising your thighs, not laughing? Or Jerry? I mean, all those people were probably cracking up with you, like right in their face.
Yeah, no, I was the instigator of that. So somebody else had to put their hands in their pockets. But what was the first early rehearsals? The crew, when I got to Jerry, they were laughing a little too hard, and I said, "What's so funny?" And they said, "Oh, Jerry has a terrible spatial thing." And so we're just laughing because it's so uncomfortable for him. So I just got closer. And by the time we went to camera, I was almost touching his nose, and he wanted to move back so bad.
It's so funny you mentioned Jerry's spatial thing.
Yeah.
Because I was literally, me and Tommy McFly right next to me, we were the ones interviewing him when, I don't know if you saw the YouTube clip where Kesha tries to hug him at the Kennedy Center. I don't know if you look it up if you ever seen it. And he goes, yeah, no thanks, 3 times, doesn't let her hug him because he has a space thing. He has a spatial
right. Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Yeah. But you were allowed to break through as the Close Talker.
Well, that's what I think. I'd never thought about this before, but that might have been Larry David's way to try to get I never thought about that until this moment. But I can't tell you a funny backstory. Larry David and Jerry found out that Spielberg had watched Seinfeld episodes in East Europe when he was shooting Schindler's List to unwind from
really
having to deal with the apocalypse. Yeah, that he would watch Seinfeld at night. And so when they heard that, they decided to spoof Schindler's List as a wink to Spielberg. So that's how that came to be.
Wow. Man, I could just pick your brain all day. And by the way, side note, the fact that Spielberg was shooting that and Jurassic Park in the same year, he gets one of the most famous summer blockbusters and one of the most acclaimed Oscar winners, both in 1993. That's ridiculous.
I didn't.
That'll probably never happen again, to have both ends of the, mainstream and Oscar spectrum like that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, Victor Fleming in the same year did The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind.
In fact, was it George Cukor, I think, directed the first half of Gone with the Wind, and that's why...
it wasn't that. It was only a couple weeks. Yeah, it was only a couple weeks. Yeah.
And that's why the first half is a little more, I think, bent towards Scarlet, and then the second half, Fleming takes over, and it's much more about Rhett.
Oh, I'd never heard of that. Wow,
interesting. I think so. But then Wizard of Oz, too. I mean, it's crazy. That's a 1-2 punch right there. But,
well, 1939 is the most successful Hollywood year.
I think Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was that year, and Stagecoach was that year, and Ninotchka, and what else? Wuthering Heights, like that. 39 was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But Judge Reinhold, you've been an absolute blast, and we didn't even get to Arrested Development, but there's so much you've done. It's ridiculous.
Thank you.
Great career, my friend.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, well, everybody, come check it out at Warner Theater, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, on Saturday, June 8th. Are you going to swing by the old stomping grounds of Fredericksburg while you're in town, or is that...
I'd like to, and I'm hoping to see some old friends at the screening. But I just want to... My job is to just create not just show the film, but have a fun Saturday night, and that's what we've been doing. It's been a party atmosphere.
You should surprise the moderator and do your Close Talker. Just get right up in his face to answer all the questions.
Well, I can't surprise him now.
Oh, no, we blew it.
No, I'm just kidding. No.
We just blew it.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Hey, thank you so much. This was really awesome.
Oh, thank you so much, too. Okay.
Right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.